say this. While I know that Dr. Sines has talked to our next, while you come up and get ready, the sound of Black Baptist Church singing and its relationship to the blues. The arts, and I said this to my friend Sam on the way up here, the arts may very well be our last line of defense. I've broken down barriers on this continent, also with the KKK and the Al-Qaeda network in Egypt because of music and the arts. So participate. Nobody here is going to harm you. This is an experience that you can carry with you for life. Say, I participated in that. Never miss those kinds of opportunities. That's why you're here. And thank God that your university is doing the right kind of programming, that has a meaning. It's not just an academic exercise. There's a real meaning behind this. All right. We're going to move into, all right, another announcement.
Yeah, just acknowledging people. We couldn't have done this without the help of assistance. And when I say assistance, I'm talking about money. And we got beautiful people in the house. Rolanda, why don't you stand? He's been instrumental in helping us, through funding. He's a very wealthy man. No, I say a very wealthy man, but he's at I guess what is your official title? Oh, see, I know I could have said all that, and he's got that. But anyway, I had to say a little something about him, not much. Somebody laughing like that, they listen to everything I say. That's good. All right, I'm gonna let you introduce the next group.
All right, we have here Mr. Fred Wilson, Helen Sims, and Tina Tucker. All right, so, wait a minute. 1, 2, 3, I see 4 of you up there. Oh, you here for support? Oh, are you all registered? Okay. Registered in the African tradition means they're married. You have the registered wife, and in some cultures you have the non-registered wife. I hope I didn't misspeak. That means that the registered wife has all the rights of the state. Okay.
I guess I'm right.
Okay, they're brother and sister. Okay, that's oh gosh. Clear that up. Okay, so we're gonna start with. Where did I get? I lost it. Fred. Is that me? Okay. Brother Fred, take it away. I know that he spoke with you all on our time thing here. Go ahead.
This is like it up. This is Fred Wilson from the Delta. I was born and raised in Munnis, Mississippi. I belong to a church by the name of St. Mark. That's where I first got my start at. My father, he became a minister. And we all joined his church because I first was baptized at a little small church named Mount Calvary under the leadership of Reverend Johnson. After that, I moved my membership back over to St. Mark. Now from St. Mark over to Johnson Chapel. And the Johnson Chapel Church, we are not organized now because the church burnt down and we didn't quite get enough money to have it rebuilt. But anyway, I belong to Little Zion MB Church on Munnis Road. Most of y'all know what Munnis Road is, don't you? Yes. Some of y'all do. Yes. But anyway, I lived on up that road there at the little town where Emmett Till was assassinated in Munnis, Mississippi. That's where I was born and raised in Munnis. And I thank God the Lord has brought me this far. I'm still doing what I'm able to do.
Hi, thank you very much, Fred. So we're talking about the sound of the Black Baptist Church singing and its relationship to the blues. Do you have any comment on that?
Yes, I do.
All right.
And the coming up, my father ordained me as a deacon of the church. And coming up in this church, the open devotion, you always have to do a hymn, a scripture, or something like that, you know, to get the service started. So when my first song that I first learned, before this time, another year.
Say nothing else. Now, before we move to the next person, young folks. Now there are many names to what he just did. And even I remember seeing a documentary about BB King and his cousin in the fields. There are similarities. I went to South Africa among the Xhosa. There are similarities. There are many names to what is long meter, old 100s, and I'm not sure what you all call it, but there's a relationship in that morning. Dr. Isaac Watts? Dr. Watt. What does that mean? Okay. And anyway, we did it in the Methodist church too. I grew up as a CME. This is the 4th Episcopal District for the CME church, so we did that. And boy, did it bring back memories. I'll say one more thing and we're going to move Sister Helen. I directed a musical drama called God's Trombones. And one evening, it was flu season. The whole cast came in sick. And a brother struck up, lined out a hymn, everybody sang, and then everybody got healed. Now, I'm not going to get into your religion or your thought, but I'm just saying the power in the music, the power in these songs. So having said that, Sister Helen, you want to talk to us for a few seconds?
Of course. We're talking about making the transition from the blues to the gospel, or vice versa, from the gospel to the blues. We're talking about a gentleman by the name of BB King, is more especially noted here today. And we know that in the churches we sung the miseries that we lived. We sung them in the songs that we sung. And we know and we understand that as we look at the transition from the gospel to the blues, there's one thing that they both have in common. the truth. The difference between the two is one of them is sung in the circumstances and the locations that's suitable, and the other one is sung to the Great Spirit. BB King is noted for singing "Oh Lord" in the church, and he's noted for singing "Oh Baby" in the juke joint. But one thing about BB King and those of us that understand the Spirit, we know how to make the connection. Because we know we walked our lives through heartache and pain and a whole lot of suffering. And it didn't matter whether we was in the cotton fields or the Mississippi Delta, we could make that spiritual connection. Right. So we were able to transition ourselves, regardless of what setting we was in, we were still singing about the truth. Some of them call them Dr. Whites and others call them the blues, some of them call them gospel. But they were truth life circumstances of a people that were struggling. The rhythm that we had came from the stripes of the suffering that we endured. The music became and then we got in tune to what we was going through. We're talking about making the transition here. We're talking about Riley BB King, one of the men that when he played the guitar, you could see the expression of the man's soul in his face. He became one with his instrument. The only way you can do that, you got to be connected to the Spirit. And when we talk about the Spirit and the soul, we connect them no matter where we are under the circumstances or within the circumstances of our life. And so when we go to church, we have church, y'all. Because somebody done had a hard time. Somebody know that the God that we serve is able to change the circumstances in our life. For our spiritual connection from the motherland of Africa came on board the slave ship with us. But when we got here to America, he did not leave us, neither did he forsake us. But we did not understand the language, but once we learned it in the churches of our master, we knew to call him Jesus, we know to call him God. But we know to connect spiritually to the power that be. So brothers and sisters, as the ancestors right now adorn me with that spirit, I want to let you know that we are a spiritual people. And our pain and our suffering is food to feed on. Because we didn't give up, that's why we made the trip. And in the God that we serve is the strength that we need to face every obstacle in our life. That's why we go to church on Sunday. That's why we praise the God that the great creator, the one that we say is the great I am. But we praise him because we know there's nothing too hard for the God we serve. So the spiritual connection, giving you just a little bit of being at church on Sunday. Letting you know that we are people that know from whence cometh our help, and we know where our help have always come from. When they took our babies from our breasts, we looked to the stars because we knew that's the only hope we had. We warned our daughters that one day this would come, and when it came, she said, "Baby, look to the North Star," for Mama would be looking up there, and no matter what you go through, no matter what Master do to you, if you look to the North Star, Mama will rock you like a baby being rocked in a cradle. Or we had our connections. Or we had the way to transition through loneliness because we were the people that needed family and kinfolk. So we made kinfolk wherever we went. We never met an African child or an American child. It didn't matter that we wouldn't become mom. We didn't learn that here in the Americas, for that was part of the tribal tradition that if a child don't have a mother, whoever in the village became that child's mother. We didn't learn humanity in America. We didn't learn spirituality in America, but we brought it over with us. And when we go to church on Sunday, we praise and shout and stomp to the great God, the great creator that gave us the power to endure all the things that no man can explain but the God we serve. Thank you.
Wow. You see what happened? I asked Brother Fred a question. Then he struck up on one of those old 100s. I just told y'all what happened that night when everybody got healed. then it led to this. and I tell you before I go to my friend here, that when I played in the Chitlin circuit, I would do blues licks and I would see hands go up in the nightclub. And I would see similar expressions. And then I would go to church on Sunday morning and I was ministering music. I played the same exact blues licks. And the same hands would go up. A lot who were in the nightclub would end up there on Sunday mornings at 11 o'clock, raising their hands to the same moaning and groaning. All right, okay. And some things you can't control, some things you can't articulate. But there's something being learned here. And I just want to ask one question. How many of you young people have not heard of that style of singing? If this is your first time, hold your hand up. Now, I know I'm down south, but only good that there are only 2 people that raise their hand who have not heard this. Now, if I were up north at the University of Pittsburgh, where I work, probably over half the students would raise their hand. Well, what's that? Well, this is why we're here to learn, and it's up to you all to help transmit this knowledge and help keep these traditions alive, because there's power in what's going on. There's power in our culture, power in our... Here I go. All right, Sister Tucker, you now have the floor. All right.
Man, if you didn't feel that, then you don't have a soul.
All right.
And that's the way it's supposed to be given to you. But you know, I want to go back, because we've already gone through the precursors of how we got to the blues, the real blues. And blues and gospel is connected in the ways that, if you look at Thomas Dorsey is called the black gospel father of the blues. Of the gospel. And he did blues before that. So what separated him, he says, from the blues and the gospel is that all he did was get a bigger paycheck when he sang the blues. Because he could talk about the woman that did him wrong and the house payments that he didn't have. And so that was the separation of the two. But when he crossed over, he started writing gospel, and he is actually the father of gospel that started the choirs, that started the call and response choirs in Chicago at the Pilgrim Baptist Church, and we're talking about the early 1930s. So everything has been said up until then, and now we're in the 1930s. But we could even go back to the 20s when women did gospel and they did blues, and black women were the first to ever record on record amongst the black community. So, but when Thomas Dorsey would write a song, it would become a national anthem for black people. So he actually wrote Precious Lord. And I want to be quick about it. I could go into a whole lesson because I do a women in business workshop, but this is not the time. But I just want to tell you the story of how he came up with that song that has become the gospel anthem for all of black people, really. So Thomas Dorsey was at a convention. He started gospel conventions, and he did them nationally. And so he was at this convention in the early 1930s. Now, mind you, we didn't have Facebook, and you didn't have where you can go on Google how you heal something that's going wrong with your body or your spirit, you know. So they had to actually just come up with songs that explain. You were your own therapist. You had to come up with songs that soothe you and got you through the day or through the year or through the months, you know. So Thomas Dorsey was at a convention, and back then they gave you telegrams. You remember the telegram? I don't remember it, but that's what they had, was telegrams. You know, they didn't call you on the phone, and then they bring you a telegram, and they tell you exactly what they want you to know. And so they brought a telegram to Thomas Dorsey, and Thomas Dorsey opened up the telegram, and he looked at it. He said, "Your wife and your child has died." And so he closed it back up, kept his composure, and he was really sad. So he got up and left and went back to Chicago where his family was. And when he got back there, you know, you probably driving along thinking, my God, what am I going to do? I mean, now I think we probably wait till you get home to tell you that your wife passed or someone you love has passed. And so he goes into his room and he stays there for days. It turns into months. And you know, we always got a ram in the bush, right? And God always sends somebody that's a ram in the bush, be it himself or someone else. So he sends a friend to him to say, "Thomas, you got to get up right now." He pulls the shades He said, you got to get up. He said, your wife is gone. Your son is gone. You got to still live on. And we all know what that's like, to lose somebody that we really love. And that's how black people express that through their singing and their writings. And so Thomas Dorsey got up. He didn't want to. He sat down at the piano and he just started playing. He started playing on the piano. And his friend said, just keep playing. Keep playing. We know you need this. Keep playing. He hadn't played in months. And so Thomas Dorsey came up with, precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, and let me stand. I am tired. He gonna help me. Lord, I'm one. Lord, and one through the storm, through the night. Lead me on to the light. Take my hand. I can imagine you playing it. Precious Lord, and lead me on.
All right, all right. And I know a number of you have to go to class. And remind you that this topic was the sound of Black Baptist Church singing and its relationship to the blues. I once directed a gospel choir at a university, and some of the parishioners had the nerve to talk about the separation of church and state. I said, yeah, but they wanted me to talk about the blues, but leave religion out of it. I said, it's the same reaction. It's the same overt reactions. It's a part of the same culture. So how you want to separate that? And then I said, okay, now around Christmas, when they started singing "O Come All Ye Faithful" with the European choirs, don't say nothing. Okay? So I want to thank this panel for this very inspiring few moments. There has been a change made, and I'm going to turn it over to the captain to talk about the change.
Hey, let's give it up one more time for our panelists. My dear friend, Dr. J, holding down. We're gonna have to take a little lunch break, and if you know anything about the traditional, if y'all know what CP time is, anyway, we kind of running on it right now, so don't worry about a thing. But before we go to lunch, though, I got to introduce y'all to Lucille. Where's Lucille? Let me see Lucille. Yeah, this is a guitarist that stayed in the hands of the late great BB King. And believe it or not, as many times I've been around this guitar, the first time I ever picked it up. Got Kib on this one. BB had a lot of these guitars, so by the way, I touched a few of them down the line. This is the first time I held this one. No, you can't have one. You can't have one. But ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Ray Neal. And he brought his brother with him this time, Larry. And they told me he was a harmonica player. I didn't know it. I only met Larry playing drums. So they say you play harmonica. I mean, I guess he gonna prove it today. Oh, okay. We got a little something going on. Ray, what you gonna play, man? Everybody wanna know why I sang the blues. Yeah, we're gonna go to lunch after this, everybody. And look, we're gonna come back. Don't leave, because the rest of the program is just as good. We got a lot in store for you.
Yeah, this will be our benediction for the first half.
applause. A round of applause.
Thank you very much. Give me this microphone, man. Hey, look, we're gonna take a lunch break, but I got my favorite team in the house with Brittany, Dr. Cotton over there, and John, the Apostle John. And he's responsible for all of this signage that you see. And we couldn't have done anything without John, y'all. Yeah. We're going to take a lunch break. Be back here at 1:05 because we got another set that we got to do. Bring it alive, all right?
And what do they recommend local places?
Well, we got, the audience has disappeared. What happened to the peoples? They ate too much. They're trying to eat.
They're jogging it off.
We might have to decide to get back from the restaurant. I really wanted people to see my friend Justin, and he's going to introduce his mate here, I guess, with the alphas. And if you look at your program, the research I did, so you'll see just what's going on with the idea of connecting fraternity groups and what they've been doing as a historical tradition. And it ties into what we've already experienced this morning with the idea of dance and the culture that we experience, as black people and as Native American people. So if Justin is fine, I want you to come on up, introduce your friend. And this is going to be from the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity group. And you can tell us a little bit about whatever you want to tell us.
Good afternoon. My name is Listen Bangman, and my brother's name is Matika Peavy. We're just going to do a little step for you based off the history of Alpha Phi Alpha.
Zoom, 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 my brother, I love my black and no-go. Oh, 6, I got the fever down in my body, the fever down in my soul, that alpha fever. Zoom, 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 my brother, I love my black and no-go. Oh, 6, I got the fever down in my body. The fever down in my soul, that alpha fever. 1906. Ice! Too cold.
Yeah.
Ice cold. Five. See, five.
Give him another hand. Well, all that food I ate, I want to get this step with you all. I tell you what we're going to do now. Red, black, and blues, the multi-ethnicity that surrounds the making of American music. If those people will come forward at this time, and we're going to continue with our panel discussions. Dr. Clark White, Sarah Hicks, Kenny Blake, and Bill Howell and Mad Perry. Can you all come forward, please? Okay, Dr. Clark is not here. While they're coming, I just want to make a statement about what you just saw. How many of you know that we can trace stepping back to West Africa? Okay, you know that. Okay, right. There is a documentary that by Dizzy Gillespie, who was actually produced by a friend of mine, that traces back to the Adundum dances in West Africa. Some of the exact same moves. They put them side by side with the Florida A&M marching band. Exact same moves. I meant to bring it this time, and I want to kick myself for not bringing that film. It's only about 12 minutes long, so maybe if I come back, I'll bring it. And you will be amazing in tracing that tradition from West Africa all the way over to Virginia, then Louisiana, and that kind of thing like that. So we want to study that history. So, well, my friend and partners up here from we're fellow Pittsburghers. I'm not wearing the black and gold either because of Graham Estate, but because of Steel the Nation. I know a little something about sports. So is Miss Sarah Hicks, is she?
No, she had to leave. I'm gonna sit in.
Oh, we got a special guest on this panel. We got a special guest sitting on this panel. And Brother Kenny Blake, who's a phenomenal musician, and I know him personally, and really a great man. And then Bill Perry. That's you, right?
Yeah.
The ones who've been asking questions for the last 2 days.
Yeah.
No, we're not gonna let him ask any more questions. So I'm just gonna go. I tell you what, why don't we? Oh, he went. Okay. Who wants to get started here? Okay, Kenny Blake.
I wanted to start that way because I'm going to begin by saying that my real inspiration is Kenny G. Because he told somebody some years ago that I know that he was worth $55 million. And my first thought was 54 is enough. Just one, would make some difference over here. I'm starting out, kidding around about the nature of being a musician, in this capitalist society, in this culturally diverse world. And I have been actually so completely inspired being here all day long with the statements about the healing powers of what we are involved in as musicians and as artists in general. I like to think that that's the main focus, is to get us all psychologically, physically through this life and enable us all to have the opportunity to spend this time in the best possible ways. I thought there was going to be more attention paid to cultural appropriation, which is something that I have great difficulty with because my background is so diverse. My family, my dad, Native American, but not clearly defined as that from those days in the 20th century. They moved to the farm so they didn't have to accept welfare. My dad was a horseman, he was a farmer, he fought in World War II in the White Army. Then he married my mother, whose family was, she was friends with Lena Horne when she was a little girl. And all of these pulls and pushes of the 20th century happened, and I was in a position that I described as being virtually a person without a country. That I couldn't clearly stand up and say, well, no, I can't say that. I can't say that. I can't say that. Fortunately, I chose something where I had a built-in editor. This thing has been in my mouth for a long time, so I wasn't able to talk. But fortunately, I like to hope I've been able to listen for this period of time. And I've been so fortunate to be around people who pursue these things with that medicinal attitude in mind and passing it on to everybody. I said to one of the students back there, our biggest gift to you is that this is not the 20th century. You know, there is more individual opportunity for people to be the person that he or she chooses to be, I think, than ever, you know. And I think the more we're exposed to all these elements of the cultural influences that have been here, the better off we are. But at the same time, there are no ironclad rules that say you have to be this or you have to be that. And after all, I think if we go back to the people that we admire the most, the ideas that we admire the most, they're the ones that say, hey, you decide what you think you should do and do the right thing. You know, I said to myself the other day, my dad used to say do the right thing, and now I say do the right thing and then make sure you're doing the right thing. You know, so that's what it's about. And so I'm glad to be here. Thank you all very much.
All right, Kenny, you want to go next? What you saying?
Yeah, because Bill has a lot to say. What I'm going to do is talk about. I'll say for me, I'm a little curious about taking a blood exam, and because I do understand what happened in the process of my mother, you know, and me in her pregnancy and so forth. And I thought about a lot of things, you know, and I thought, you know, well, whatever I see in the mirror is only just a part of what maybe I am. And my grandmother always said that when you see people, just remember they're human too. And so I always thought about things, and my grandmother was smart. She had a 3rd grade education, as she called it, you know, but she always read the paper and never pronounced any of the words really correctly, but she always knew what it meant. She said, yeah, I see what's going on. I mean, she could do it, you know, interpret it in her own way. But when she started to talk to me about my life, she didn't try to detail anything. She just says that when I went to your father's house and told them that this is his baby, he said he didn't know. And so when she said she got angry about it, and so she took me back home and said, well, she would raise me, and she did. And so, I say, I'm telling you that part to say that racial ties and discriminations, they are learned. They're learned behaviors. And so when you're not sure about what you're talking about, sometimes it's best just to be silent and let silence carry its own weight. And it'll do it every time. When I met Kenny, I knew something was wrong with Kenny. And it didn't bother me because I said, you know what, there's something wrong with me too. And I met Bill before I met Kenny. Bill and I traveled and did a lot of things, and I learned a lot of lessons from Bill. A lot of them I learned not to do, you know. And so, and then after a point in time, after all this discussion in our life, you know, being intertwined with music, I found out that Bill was a descendant of the Choctaw, you know, heritage. And I thought, you know, Bill never told me, but I always thought there was something wrong with Bill too when we get on stage, because he never, I don't know, I saw him get mad a few times, and he'd throw, the maddest I ever seen Bill, we were recording, and he would throw his guitar, he'd use cuss words and stuff, because he kept messing up the same part over and over, and he just threw it down. But then when I found out that Bill was was of Choctaw heritage. I called him back and I said, well, Bill, you need to come back to this one this year. He was here last year. We had fun. But I thought that in the idea of putting together a program like this, it didn't seem like it was something that would fit the blues. When I first thought about it, I met Mudbone, and Mudbone was here, and he approached me, and we talked, and then I started thinking, are there any more Mudbones out there, anywhere? And then, of course, as I began to dig into the history of blues, there are like lots of Native American people, and I like saying Native sometimes as opposed to just Native American, but that's just my preference. So I don't know what you got out of what I just said, but in the process, I hope you remember that your identity in the long run, it has to do with what's on the inside of you. No matter how many times you peel that stuff back in the mirror and how many times you peel stuff on you in the mirror, it's not going to change who you are on the inside. So that's my way of looking at life, without discrimination. Thank you.
Thank you. How y'all doing? Great. I'm supposed to talk, right? I don't know what to say. I'm lost for words. Well, no, actually what I wanted to do is I wanted to see if anybody wanted to start a crap game. No?
You lose your money.
Well, what can I say, But
being a musician is a gamble.
yes, it is. Tell me about it. I've been gambling for quite a few years. I'm only 27 years old, but...
What'd you say? Talk about it. Flip that around.
Like double it, triple it, you know what I'm saying? But, I'm glad to be here and take part in this. But for once, I'm kind of really lost for words. My grandmother? Yeah, well, see, it comes from both sides of my family, the paternal and the maternal side. Both of my great-grandfathers were Choctaw. And so it kind of passed me along with it, but then at the same time, my maternal grandfather was white, okay? So I'm kind of like a mutt, y'all. A real mutt for real. But again, I'm kind of lost for words. It's kind of too early. I'm just, I usually be getting up about this time, okay? I'm a musician from my heart. I sleep all day and, well, we know, you know what I'm saying, but.
I'm gonna coach Bill a little bit.
Yeah, coach me a little bit.
So how you feel like I know that there is a document that was filmed with you at the grave site of yours. So what was that about?
Well, that's the old family cemetery. It goes all the way back from my paternal side to slavery. And that was my fourth grade, I think it was, grandmother and everything, headstone that you saw. She was born a slave and she died a slave, 1858. And the same land that they worked as slaves was same land I picked cotton on, chopped cotton and stuff like that. Heck, by the time I was 10 years old, I could pick 200 pounds of cotton a day. I don't know if any of y'all ever seen the pictures of the little kid, maybe 4 or 5 years old, with a burlap bag tied over his shoulder out in the cotton field. Well, that was me. Okay, I was in the cotton field seriously. My daddy was a sharecropper. I mean, he goes way back. And, but it was just something that, at that time in my life, which was a long time ago, it was no way that I wanted to, follow in none of the footsteps as far as being a farmer, a moonshine maker, any of that stuff.
So do you still live on that land?
No. I, long time ago, I made it what's the word I'm looking for? A priority to get out around my people and stuff. They keep up too much. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to use the word, but I kind of like being by myself. I'm a loner, and give me more chance to think and just avoid, other controversies or whatever the case may be.
But is it true that they didn't want you to be a musician?
Well, of course.
I mean, I know it's a typical story, but...
Yeah, but I mean, it's like some people are not cut out to do certain things. This was what I was born to do, to be a blues man, to be a musician, I should say. Because along this journey, I started out in gospel years ago. And, I played blues, I played R&B, I played funk, you name it. And I had to do it because, if I wanted to make some money other than working a job, a regular 9 to 5, that's just not me. I can't get up early enough, okay? Because I was the one last night that said, 7:30 this morning. Come on, will you? That's too early. Shoot, I be just getting my, really getting into the good sleep part of it at that time, all right? But go ahead and coach me some more.
Let me say something here. And
Yeah.
I think I'm from North Louisiana, and to allude to some of the things you said about your heritage, and most of the people I knew in North Louisiana had some kind of linkage with some native tribe. If you go back and dig, from Cherokee all the way to Blackfoot. So there's a lot of common ancestry that maybe we don't even know about when we go and we dig up our family history. So it kind of ties into what you all are talking about now,
Yeah.
in terms of how we are all really one people. I just wanted to point that out.
Yes, and we are, and if we could all get along as one people, and then this would be a great world to live in.
This
And that's another
conference
story.
is an example of that.
Yes.
Us coming together,
Yes,
on a common cause.
right.
That's why it's so important.
I agree with you 100%.
Kelly, your hand is up.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about what Sarah said earlier about her ethnicity and coming up with percentages to validate those statements. And I'm not sure. I know in my lifetime I've seen people have major problems with those things, and now we are at a place where I think it echoes the state of the internet and Wikipedia, that intellectual property is kind of on the way out. You don't own things, and it may just be that for the students that are here, that concepts of the kind of ownership or identification that existed in the 20th century are not going to exist in the same way that they are now. Which, in my humble opinion, is good. Because we're all, as eagle. Yeah, I'm trying to think of eagles. Swift eagle, yeah. Swift eagle said, it's all, we're sharing all these things all the time. That's what we do. So, and to act as an advocate. My other thing that I'm just thinking about is for all the students, I think, and this is going to sound hilarious, we need more lawyers. Everybody should, everybody can be an advocate in a way in the 21st century that, I don't think that those avenues were open in the past, and it's going to be international like crazy. I'm assuming that Alfonso is going to have a lot of Asian people here next year.
Strong possibility. That's it.
Yeah. Okay, so I've been told we need to move on to the next phase. I want to thank Bill. He's about to have a final 30 seconds of something to say, right?
Well, I'm still trying to think of something to say. For the first time, I'm lost for words, What can I say? But before I get down, do y'all want to hear a joke? Well, go ahead and tell one so I can then tell it to somebody.
Let's give the panel a hand.
Thank y'all. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move to number 3. And I think you're in for a treat. Cowboys and Indians, an African American perspective. I've been talking to this man over the last 24 hours, and he's very knowledgeable.
Would you like to use the podium or this?
All right, it's yours.
I could sit down, but it's kind of lazy. That's because you make that food. Yeah. All right. So, you just want me to start? Yeah. How's everybody doing? Great. Good. Yeah. I can hold it.
You want to hold it? It's up to you now. Hold it.
It's great to be in Mississippi. My dad was born at a location called Rise and Son, and then he grew up in Winterville, where he told me his father had a grocery store. And my dad was born in 1903, and he told me about the flood of 1909. Some of y'all might remember that. I'm just joking. But he never came back, and so I never visited Mississippi, so this is my first time being in Mississippi. And it's been great, and I've really been enjoying it. I would like to thank Dr. Sanders, who invited me down, and he's been like a cousin, like somebody you in your family that you hadn't seen in a long time, so we got that rapport. And I'd like to thank Rosalind Wilcox, professor at Coahoma Community College, for telling Dr. Sanders about me and my research. African American history is very extensive. I majored in African American studies when I was in college, and it became very apparent that not much of it has been documented. And what I've done in my research is only scratch the surface. And so there's a lot more to be found out, a lot more to know. Now basically, I started playing music when I was 10 years old. And I didn't have a formal background in music, but I played bongos and conga drums, which was kind of a irregular type of thing to do. But I did that in grade school. Then when I got to high school, I was basically playing basketball. And then when I got out of high school, I started a rhythm and blues band, which won the Illinois State Battle of the Bands in 1969. It was a great band. And then half the band got drafted by the Army for the Vietnam War. So that broke up that band. But I continued my musical pursuits and have been playing what we call jazz since the early 70s. So I've been involved in jazz a long time. And for a while, I wrote a music column for 13 years called Blue Note. And it was on blues and jazz artists. Now, the interesting thing of it is, I had to find out what was a blue note. And blue note basically comes from the aspect of the fact that music is notated basically in a European tradition. But when the Africans came over, some of their music couldn't be notated. They're like slurs and glides, glissendos, or some things like James Brown would sing. That cannot be notated. So that became a blue note. And so that's where the concept of a blue note comes from. So that's part of an African characteristic of music today. It's a blue note. So I'm not going to talk about music here, but we could get into that. It's very interesting. I would like to say that blues is really African American folk music. And it's a lot of times people get confused and try to describe what blues is. Well, you can't really describe blues if you use the word blues. Blues is African American folk music.
and jazz is African American classical music. That's basically what they are. But be it in fact that the music has been defined from people outside the black community, we have to deal with those terms. But that's exactly what the music is. Now, my mother was from Oklahoma, my father was from Mississippi. And so as a kid from Chicago, I would go to Oklahoma and visit relatives. And I had a large group of relatives who were cowboys. Dad and the wool cowboys. And as a kid going to Oklahoma, I just thought it was some crazy black folks. Because I see black people in movies and television riding and roping, breaking calves and horses and doing that whole thing. And I just said, I got some crazy kinfolks. And so, that's what they did. They still do it today. This past weekend, they had a rodeo in Arcadia, Oklahoma. They put it on every year, and my cousin produces that. So one of the things I got to notice was the fact that the whole thing that kind of pushes the modern cowboy, the modern rodeo artist, is the whole thing about the Wild West. And if you look at the Wild West, if you look at a movie or television show, it's about outlaw and lawmen, primarily. And basically, as I went through college, I found out, blacks were in the West, and actually blacks were probably about 1/5 of all the cowboys who worked the cattle trails from Texas to Kansas and Nebraska. But you hardly ever heard about black men who were outlaw or lawmen. And so I know I don't have a lot of time, so I'm gonna make this real short. So as I got involved in reading about some of these things and doing some research, it kind of blew me away because I'd never heard about any of these things. And so I decided I had to find out as much as I could. And the more I delved into it, the more it seemed like it was implausible. It just didn't make sense. And so I wrote a book, and it was called Black, Red, and Deadly in 1991. Black and Indian Gunfighters of the Indian Territory. Indian Territory was pre-statehood Oklahoma. And the information in that book kind of, flipped people's wig to a certain extent because they had never heard of any of this stuff, seen it. I had never heard of it. I went to high school in Oklahoma, and I did not know that Native Americans had African slaves. I did not know that until I started doing research on this book. And if you look at what happened in the Southeast, it wasn't the full-blood Indians, it was the mixed-blood Indians. Now, mixed-blood Indians are Indians with European ancestry. And so they embraced chattel slavery and had huge plantations. And even when they were forced by Andrew Jackson to the Indian Territory, they took their African slaves with them in the thousands. And then when they got to the Indian Territory, many of the wealthy Native Americans then reopened up their plantations. There was one Choctaw, mixed blood, in the Indian Territory, had 6 plantations and hundreds of African slaves. And to make that point very interesting is that many of y'all know the songs, Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, Steal the Way to Jesus, and Roll, Jordan, Roll. Well, those songs were made up by an African named Wallace Willis on a Choctaw plantation in Oklahoma. And those songs were recorded, and the guy heard Wallace sing these songs, and he gave them to the people at Fisk University, and the Fisk singers took those songs and made them international in scope. But I wrote that, so my Black, Red, and Deadly was my first book. My second book was Black, Buckskin, and Blue, African American Scouts and Soldiers on the Western Frontier. This came out in 1999. My third book is a biography on a gentleman that was in my first book, Bass Reeves. That book is Black Gun, Silver Star, The Life and Legend of Frontier Marshal Bass Reeves. And I just finished my fourth book on a black outlaw named Cherokee Bill, whose real name was Crawford Goolsby, and he was everything Hollywood tries to make Billy the Kid up to be. Now I'm gonna back up just a little bit because we're talking about blacks and Indians, and this book has also a lot of interaction between blacks and Indians. And if we look at scouts, many of the most important scouts on the Western Frontier, or people who work in the fur trade industry, were black men. James Beckworth, who came out of St. Louis, he was freed by his father, who was a slave master, and he went and lived with the Crow Indians in Montana. James Beckworth found the pass from Salt Lake to Sacramento. Before people would have to go to California, they had to go all the way through Southern California, up through the valley to get to San Francisco. So the pass from Salt Lake City to Sacramento is still known as Beckworth Pass. He did a lot of things. He was the first mountain man that had his own autobiography. So it's very important. James Beckworth, he wrote his, well, he was a writer. He had his first biography, and some people said it was a bunch of lies, but then some people said, well, mountain men, all of them lied. But a lot of people were, contesting what he had said. But James Beckworth was a very interesting guy. He lived with the Crow Indians, had 2 or 3 Crow wives, and he was forced to go with the U.S. military to fight the Cheyenne Indians at the Sand Creek, which is a very famous battle where a whole village of Cheyenne were massacred in Colorado. There was a gentleman before James Beckworth. There was a black man who was part Cherokee. He was a river pirate on the Mississippi River. And he did a lot of damage, and they told him he had to get off the river because, they were going to kill him. So he left the river and went up into the northern plains, became a mountain man. His name was Edward Rose, and they called him Cut Nose because when he was on the Mississippi River, he had got part of his nose cut off. But he was very famous, became known as one of the greatest scouts, in that area during the early 1830s. In the 1840s, 1850s, 1860s, there was a black Indian named Jim Ned who was part Delaware, and he was always known for wearing a turban on his head to hide his kinky hair. And he had his own contingent of Delaware Indians that followed him. He was very active in Texas. In Texas today, there's a Jim Ned Creek. There's actually a Jim Ned School District named for this man in Texas. And during the Civil War, he led a contingent of Union Indians that fought the Confederate Indians, and he wiped out a whole village of Confederate Indians at Wichita Agency in the Indian Territory, now Oklahoma. And he was doing so much damage, the United States government told him to desist from the raids he was making on the Confederates. I don't know why they would do that. It was in the state of war, but they told him to pull back because he was hurting them so bad. Moving up a little further in time, there was another black man up in the Dakotas, and he lived in that area, and he spoke fluent Lakota Sioux, and his name was Isaiah Dorman, and he got paid a lot of money to serve as interpreter. When General Custer decided he was going to go to track down the Lakota and the Cheyenne Indians became the Battle of Little Bighorn, he took Isaiah Dorman with him, and Isaiah lost his life. And they say Isaiah didn't really want to go on the trip, but he did. Indians called him Black White Man. That was the name of Black White Man. But his name was Isaiah Dorman. If we look at the Apache campaigns in the Southwest during the Indian Wars, there was an African Choctaw, originally from the Indian Territory, again, now Oklahoma. He served as an interpreter and a scout in the Apache Wars. His name was Sam Bowman. He was in the Apache Wars for 20 years. And the Apache stated of all the interpreters the United States had, they felt that Sam Bowman did the best job of interpreting their words. And they trusted him to say what they really said. And he was there for 20 years. The day that he mustered out of service, he was murdered for his pay. And he was illiterate, so he didn't leave any memoirs. But he was noted to be a great scout. The greatest scout on the Western frontier for the U.S. military was a black man who was part African, part Dakota Sioux Indian. And his father had been a black man who worked in the fur trade industry up in the Dakotas. And his name was Frank Garrard. And his life is very interesting. I don't have enough time to get into it right now. But General Crook, who was the commanding officer of the Northern Plains U.S. military, said if he had to lose Garrard, he would give up a third of his command. He was just that important. So you can read books about Buffalo Bill or Wild Bill Hickok or Kit Carson, whoever. The most important scout on the Western frontier was a black man named Frank Garrard. It's very important to remember that. There was another black man who went with a white family up into Montana, and they died, and he went over and lived with the Crow Indians on their reservation for 60 years. And this guy's name was Smokey Wilson, Charles Smokey Wilson, and he was notated because he could break any horse the Crow Indians could not break. He was also the policeman on the reservation, and he was also an Indian policeman. His name is Charles Smokey Wilson. And I wrote about all these people in this book, Black, Buckskin, and Blue. So, you know, you can buy this book. And also another gentleman I like to name is Britton Johnson. Britton Johnson was the gentleman in Texas. He had formerly been a slave, and he got his freedom. The Kiowa Indians came in and raided in northern Texas. They kidnapped his wife and 2 of his kids, and he spent a couple of years going into the Indian Territory looking for his family, and he eventually got them out. And he was later killed because he used to take freight between military posts on the western frontier. And that became the inspiration really for the John Wayne movie, The Searchers. It's Britton Johnson, a black man from northern Texas. Now, one of the interesting things is that when I wrote my first book, I was looking at blacks who had been in law and outlaw. And one of the things that was very interesting to me when I found out was that there were many black people who had been slaves of the 5 civilized tribes that they called them. When they got their freedom, many of them went into law enforcement. And so you had blacks who were Indian policemen in the Indian Territory, and then you had blacks who were also deputy United States Marshals. And the most famous was a gentleman named Bass Reeves. And on the flip side of the law was outlaws such as Dick Glass, who was a Creek freedman, and he was the most famous outlaw in the 1880s. And it was stated that, I found a newspaper said, if Dick Glass isn't brought to bear soon, he'll have a bigger name than Jesse James. And then in the 1890s, Cherokee Bill was, that's my next book that I will have out. I do have Cherokee Bill in my first book, as Dick Glass also. But I went back and found as much as I could on Cherokee Bill. And so the name of that book is Cherokee Bill, Black Cowboy, Indian Outlaw, because his mother was a Cherokee freedman.
Tell us about the Lone Ranger.
All right. The main person that I wrote in my first book was Bass Reeves. Bass Reeves was a former slave from Texas, and during the war, the Civil War, he was a body servant for his master, and they got into a card game, and he knocked him out. And so doing that, being a slave from Texas, you could lose your life. And so he went on the run, and he lived with the Creek Indians and the Seminole Indians. And then after the war, he became a scout for marshals working into the territory because he had lived in the territory, knew it well. And in 1875, he got commissioned as a deputy U.S. Marshal. He worked from 1875 up till 1907, 32 years, the longest term of any lawman of note in the Indian Territory. During that time, he arrested upwards of 4,000 people in the territory. He killed over 20 people in the line of duty, and he became a legend. Black, white, and red people were singing songs about him during his life. If you got into a gunfight with Bass Reeves, it was tantamount to committing suicide. He was very good at tracking people down wherever they might be. And he became a legend. And much of what he did was very similar to the Lone Ranger in the fact that he had an Indian sidekick because they mandated by federal law to have a possum in with you whenever you went. He only just took one. Many of the guys took 2 or 3 with them. And he rode a white horse at one time. He worked in disguise on a regular basis, trying to track criminals down. And he gave out silver dollars. The Lone Rangers, gave out silver bullets. So Bass gave out silver dollars. But he was a great lawman. And he had a kind disposition. He wasn't a mean, evil guy. And he was very good, knew the Indian tribes he worked with. He spoke their language. Although he wasn't a freedman like many of the blacks were in the territory, but he got very close to those people in that community and became very, very effective. And so it was almost unreal because it was over 130 deputies got killed in the Indian Territory. And for him to escape assassination attempts, he was never wounded. Many people say, some people say he did get wounded on one time, but he was probably the greatest frontier hero in American history, bar none. I don't know anybody you can compare him to, and he was a great, great baller.
Now you know the real story behind the Lone Ranger. I'm not sure you got, how many of you young people in the back have heard of the Lone Ranger? Nobody? One person? Well, I don't know if that's a good thing or not. We're gonna move on to
Whippersnappers, the whole thing.
thank you, Don. The beat. The soul of African American music, from blues to Motown to the rap and hip hop nation. Come forward, please. Ricky Buckhead, Joe Johnson, Cuba, Kumba, Sire, and Bill Perry. Would you all come forward, please? I don't know if we need to do a 7-minute. The danger about eating a lunch like we did is your blood slows down. So if you need to stretch and get up and do a few of these, you better do it now. Oh, you Bill Perry Jr.?
Yes, sir.
Oh, well, you didn't tell me that. Great piano player. Yeah, you gonna laugh it up. Do we need to do a 7-inning stretch? We had all that good food. Just start slowing down. We start getting lazy. Okay. Let me know. We get up and do some jumping jacks, some stretches, and whatever, and sit-ups. Get the circulation going again. And the beat goes on. Trying to adhere to the schedule. So we're gonna hear some music? Oh, okay. Well, while they're setting up, we older folks up here, and you students in the back, some of you all left. Are there any questions? Okay. Are there any comments or observations so far that you would like to share with us? I got to move around now to get my blood circulating. Yeah, somehow I heard Amen. Amen. Kenny, you want to tell us about Amen? Amen comes from the God Amen. You talking about that? Come and tell us about it, folk. Be ba ba. That boom. Be ba ba. Everybody follow me. Let me hear that sing. Sing that. Be ba ba. Ladies, you can go upstairs. Be ba ba. Now snap your fingers on 2 and 4. 4. Be ba. Where did she go? She's not in it. Ba. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Be ba ba. Come here. Yeah, you keep going. Don't stop. Be ba. You going ba ba. Keep going. Don't stop because I'm about to do something. Be. Now. We can move to that in a syncopation. You watch what happens to us. This is our way of staying awake. So y'all, for you don't really need the music. You start making my own music. See how I'm moving? Yeah. That food got to me too. Ain't that right, AKA? We got people here in Mississippi Valley who I thought were students. They turned out to be grown. I mean, all of us are grown. They were grown women. They up there laughing and trying to hide. Now, I'm not gonna sing you out. I mean, that's a compliment. I'm giving you up. Okay, so is this going to be a performance or a talk, or what are you doing?
Oh, we're going to do this, and then we're going to discuss, and then we're going to make our way down there. 2 short pieces.
All right. Are you ready to proceed? Oh, by the way, Ken, did you have something else in mind when you asked that question? This is as an analyzation. I was just talking to your theory instructor here, music theory instructor. That's definitely notational. But there's also the natural things that happen that a lot of times we can't articulate in the Western notation. So I hear a performer, I go to another country, he ain't thinking about 145, he's just doing what comes natural to him. So, all right.
You want to talk about that? A capo? You need a capo?
Yeah.
Didn't you bring it? Well, you don't need it. I know. Everybody got a capo? These guys don't. That don't put you in your key. I was saying for those people like Kenneth talking about the strong commitment to the cycle of force. It's just a gravitational pull. I don't know any other way to talk about it, but when you write music, even if you strip down Mozart to Beethoven, anybody, it's going to come back to those basic chords of gravitational pull. They do a lot of stuff between that, but it still just kind of comes. It's kind of like artists trying to figure out what to do with black and white when they got all these other possibilities. But you're still going to need black and white. Somewhere you're going to have to get back to the primary resource that whatever it is, right? And that's kind of what music does in a way. You go and introduce these. Man, I'm sorry about the capo.
Oh, it's all right. It's all right.
Yeah, one other thing because I think I've been in Pittsburgh a little bit longer. Kenny, the U.S. Steel Building, Mount Washington, and the Cathedral of Learning. When I first got to Pittsburgh, that was the only way I could get around Pittsburgh. If I knew where one of those, that's your one chord. One chord was the U.S. Steel Building. The four chord was the Cathedral of Learning, and Mount Washington was the 5 chord. And I got lost in Pittsburgh plenty of times, so I went to one of those chords, Those are the primary chords for you people in theory. They call them the basic primary chords. If you can get around 1, 4, and 5, then you can pretty much deal with all the other 2s and the 3s and the 6s and the 7s. Those are your tall buildings. Okay.
You know, they get on the price is right. You say, what's in your purse?
What's in your purse? I ain't got nothing.
You got a cake on it.
Okay. All right. Gentlemen, are we ready? Yo, let's give them a round of applause. Come on, let's go. All right, who's gonna start speaking?
Paul, call it.
Paul?
We need yours.
They need you.
We need this cake. You got it. I think you got it.
Okay.
You need it on the first round.
Now somebody earlier,
Did you ever find out what happened to
somebody, where's Bill? Where's your dad at? Bill, you said, does somebody know a joke? Is that what you asked? Huh? That's what I was about to say. Not you. Not you. You're not a joke. Oh, okay. Are we ready? You may begin.
No money.
Thank you. That was a very, very old Fulani song. It just sound like the blues you know here. I just wanted to sing that first song to let you know that all those years after my brothers came here, I found out this kind of melodies still being sung here in Mississippi, especially in the hill country, the counties, like Junior Kimbrough, same. So I'm going to do now a second song called Ngopeka Mia, Let Me Go. Ngopeka Mia,
You know, they're gonna come down now. Some are taking a shortcut, some are going around. I used to be able to do that. All right. Got a broke here by that. So why don't we go from left to right this way? Your right to left. Okay, Captain. Okay. Nothing new under the sun. When they used to do break dancing, when it became popular in pop culture, it was nothing pretty much I hadn't seen in the church. And I'm serious. I saw 80-something plus young people doing around spinning faster than your eyes. I try to do work on the sanctified church. Everything cycles. It cycles around, and it comes back around. I've gotten people up in their 70s with young people in their 20s, and people in their 70s do music, and young people in their 20s start rapping to what they were hearing the guys in their 70s do. So we want to see how the connection of this all ties into what now we know as hip hop. This is what the subject we want to keep to about that, because we do have, well, we had young people in here. We still got a couple in here. They're going to want to know how what we've done has set the pathway for what we now call hip hop and pop music. And I want to know too. I mean, I like to learn more too. So I like to take things away from a conference like this, something I can go and chew on. So why don't we go, we're going to start here. We're just going to take a few minutes each to make a statement about that tie-in from what you're doing all the way from Africa up to hip hop, which is what our topic says. Is that all right?
Right.
Okay. You want to get started? Let's just go right down the road. Okay, the mic.
Hello. As I talked about this morning, when Africans came to this country, they couldn't have instruments, so no drums. But as far back as Thomas Jefferson, he allowed his slaves to participate in fife and drum. So that was the drums and with the wooden fifes that they played. And they could do that. And then later on, after the military continued to play fife and drums, they did it in battle, blacks began to pick it up. And what we know from white military guys, they played pretty straight cadences. Well, once it got into the hands of the blacks, they began to swing the cadences a little bit. So you went from to and they played the flute. Now the drum set didn't come about until the early 1900s, and it took place down in New Orleans. So Warren Baby Dobbs was one of the first persons to be really known for his drum set playing, and there were a lot of musicians in New Orleans that played drum set. And of course he played with Louis Armstrong of the likes, and they were playing like what we would know as like Dixieland music or New Orleans music. And on the other hand, John Philip Sousa had just stopped marching, and the guys who played in those bands, they were part of the creation of the drum set. So you had different types of music coming, but the beat that we know today to be in blues, Motown, and hip hop was something that would start down there in New Orleans and go through to swing time and then to bebop up until the period that we're at now, where the drum set has taken on a new meaning. And Joe Eagle's going to talk to you about that.
For me, one of the things that impressed me a lot about African rhythms, in the 90s, I started a school for the purpose of teaching our kids, preparing them with a background in culture and heritage. And that was one of the parts of it. But in doing that, I had African drum classes, and I had different teachers from different places to come and teach African and Latin percussion. Mr. Burkhead also taught classes there. And what impressed me the most is the rhythm. The last rhythm we were playing, it's called High Life. It's an African rhythm. Well, I came up as a SWAC marching band buff. I knew all the cadences at every school. And as they were playing the rhythms, it was just unbelievable to me that they sound so much like the cadences that I was already playing or already listening to with different marching bands. And it kind of took me on the path of, I started working on the documentary. And in the documentary, I was tracing the path of the origins of the different cadences. And at one point it was always this path that sent me back to this same person named Johnny Lane, or else it would send me back to somebody from Louisiana. The cadences always come back to, the ones at Jackson State. I was so proud of, the War and Thunder and what they were doing. But when I started interviewing everybody and tracing the origin of the cadences, it was this thing about Louisiana and I don't know, and that may go back to that swing or some of that thing, but I don't know what that's about yet. It remains to be seen. I will complete this to get to the bottom of something.
Was it any of that tied into the funeral marches coming back from the graveyard, those type of rhythms?
There is something similar to that marching bands use, and we were talking about that earlier. Every marching band now does it. It started with Johnny Lane, brought it to Southern, and it's a thing called police beat, which is it's a beat that ties cadence from one cadence to the other. So there's like a part between when the cadence finishes, then they go into this jump, 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 and it's similar to, what you're saying, but it was used by police. And matter of fact, I think it was during funerals. When I think about it.
Yeah, we know that to be a real strong tradition.
Yeah,
the whole thing about the second line.
It was police. They call it police beat, and it was actually originated in police departments. But the few times that police were in parades, parades were doing funeral processions. So that may be something that I'll take up on.
I think, yeah. Bill, I'm talking to you, very interested in it. You get to see your background in terms of a multiplicity of styles of music. How can you tie that in? And I know you do a lot of performing into, say, coming from some of the older styles, you do all the way up to some of the, more contemporary style.
Yes. I would actually had a particular order, but I guess I'll just go ahead and say mine now. I was going to save mine for last. Essentially, with the rap music, I guess I'm the youngest on the panel, so they're like, you do the rap. So here I am, I'm doing the rap. All right, but rap does have a deep part of my history. When I first got into music in the mid-'80s, around 83, 84, rap music is what influenced me. And as far as tying it in with what we're talking about here on the panel, rap, at least as an undercurrent thing, it's kind of a subtle thing. We used to call it rhythmic African poetry. That's where the word rap came from. And essentially meaning that, it was playing off of the tradition of being what I heard Vasti Jackson call rebel music with the blues. And it was commentary for what was going on in the streets. I don't know if any of you are hip to Grandmaster Flash and the song called The Message. The hippity hip hop. I don't know if y'all, I'm looking at y'all. Y'all looking at me like y'all don't know that. Okay. Okay, we'll do it in a second. But anyways, once again, The Message. The song was called The Message. Now, the thing about rap, it was stripped down because the DJs are actually the ones that started rap music. It wasn't rappers. They were the ones trying to get on at the parties. It was the DJs that started it. Kool Herc, Grandmaster Flash I just mentioned. These two guys are the practitioners of hip hop. And what they essentially would do with a vinyl record, they would get the vinyl record, and there was always a part of the song that had what we like to call the break. It was just an instrumental part of the song that was just kind of like a beat. And it'd be like maybe only a little fragment of time that it would last, and then it would go back into the song overall. Well, what these DJs did is they would grab that little section and just repeat it over and over again on two different records, crossfading it with the crossfader in the middle, and and to tie in what he was talking about, the break dancers. They loved that. So, you know, it was enough for them to concentrate on. They get down there, like you say, spinning on their head. I was a break dancer. I actually could break dance pretty good, but anyway. You know, it simplified it for them in terms of the rhythm aspect of it, because they were feeling it off of the rhythmic aspect. They were dancing to the rhythmic aspect of it. It wasn't so much about the chord changes that, you know, and the harmonies and melodies that were going on prior, like especially in the 70s when there were a lot of grandiose changes in the music, like the song being like one key. Thank you. The song would be like one key, and then like, you know, all of a sudden it would go into all these mountain of changes and stuff like that, or like with Stevie Wonder, he would modulate up to a key and stuff like this. Well, with the hip hop thing, they just wanted to focus on the beat. It wasn't so much about the music in the earlier days. They were just trying to essentially get the beats to coincide with each other on the two records, keeping the breakbeat going. And that was pretty much all the hip hop community needed at that time. And the music that started to get parlayed into it was sampled music. They would sample the greats like James Brown, sample something from Miles Davis, Isaac Hayes. There's a song by Public Enemy called Black Steel in the Hour of Chaos. And the riff is ba-doo-ba-doo, go-doo-da-ba-ga-ba-doo-ba-doo-ba-doo, go-doo. That's Isaac Hayes. You know, I don't know if you guys hit it. It has a long title. It's like it's a long title. Somebody help me. Anybody know the song? Thank you. There it is. There it is. I couldn't say. That's like saying supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. So, anyways, but that riff, and mind you, I heard the song Black Steel in the Hour of Chaos when I was in high school listening to Public Enemy, and I did not know where that song was borrowed from. So for my generation, we got introduced to a lot of these songs by the sampled music that was in rap music. I discovered Miles Davis through rap. I discovered Herbie Hancock through rap. I discovered James Brown through rap, and a whole slew of other artists that I was trying to figure out the samples. And, you know, it's just like, oh, well, you know, the beat is cool, but, you know, where does that music come from? And so that, a lot of people in my generation, I'm a Gen Xer for those curious. I was born in the 70s, so I was coming into age in the 80s and 90s. And a lot of this music had already come to pass, and it wasn't so much at the parties anymore, you know, save some of the classics like, say, by Marvin Gaye and such, and Stevie Wonder, Motown. But for the most part, for the new generation, they were trying to connect to something that was the voice of their generation. Thus came the rap music. But I want to be clear on something else, you know, just to kind of skip ahead so I can pass it along. The one thing that I said to Alfonso Sanders, I don't know if he's still in here, we were having a conversation a couple of days ago, and I remembered the quote. We were talking about, like, you know, with today's generation not really trying to look back at what influenced the music. You know, they're just caught up in what's going on now, and if it's from back in the day, it's just, you know, antiquated. But I tell them to be careful to not stand on the shoulders of software. And what I mean by that is, don't think you're a genius just because you bought Pro Tools and have learned how to manipulate that software and think that you're just as good as someone like Quincy Jones.
Yeah.
You are not Quincy Jones because you can cut and chop and paste. It's a whole different, now mind you, the people that do that, they're you know, experts in doing that. But there is a difference, and there's also an understanding of the appreciation. See, a lot of these young kids don't appreciate musicianship. That's why I applaud young rappers like Kendrick Lamar, who actually incorporates live musicians, not only in his recordings, but in live performance. And there's a slew of other artists that do the same thing. But I'll just leave it at that point.
You got a lot of energy. You got a lot of energy. You know, before
Thank you.
And I want to hear from Isaac Hayes' cousin before we, but you know, it's generally bands don't look like that. This whole thing about hip hop culture, we know, you know, rhythm is in our genealogy. The whole thing about breakdancing, if we go back to the capoeira, the martial arts style, because Brazil came to by ear and the movements. The graffiti, hip hop culture, we've always had the urge to write on walls. If you don't believe me, go to Egypt. There's some of the language that's written on the temples is still yet to be discoded. So we've had that natural urge. So it goes back around in terms of full circle. And the whole thing about the beat and the rhythm, and we couldn't afford to buy a whole lot of fancy stuff, so we used that beatbox. That's because we couldn't afford all that more, we finally could afford it later on. But I want to hear from Isaac Hayes' cousin. I haven't heard from you today. You know what I'm talking about, because I haven't got your name straight. Please forgive me. Say your name too.
My name is Adib Sabir.
Okay, Adib Samir. Let's just talk about this subject of tying in all what you were doing. And I saw you up on the stage, and I saw you with your eyes closed, and you were feeling it. And can you bring it up to the contemporary times for us?
I'll do my best. I'm not an academician. I'm not.
Don't have to be an academician. Just speak from the heart.
The first thing I want to say is that we are all one. We all come from the same gene pool. We are all connected through mitochondria DNA. We're the same people. No matter what color, no matter how we look on outside, we are the same people. So there is always African influence in the music because Africa is the seat of civilization. Everything that happened in the world was started in Africa. There's nothing new under the sun. All the rhythms that we play, all the music that we play, it has already been done in some form. We just reinterpret it and redistribute it. And all the music that we play is not ours. We don't create this. It comes through us, through our Creator. It's a gift from our Creator to the people out of love and respect for this creation. So this is who we are. This is what we do. There's no room for egos. There's no room for we doing this and we doing that. There's no room for that. It all comes from the Creator. We just conduits. So with that said, I give up.
Very well put. Very well put. No, this is very important. So because I hadn't heard from you earlier today, you've spoken so much, so would you take a few minutes to wind us down? I'm talking now, my Senegal friend. Close us out. I didn't know that. I didn't know. Somebody should have said something to me.
Yeah, thank you.
But everything is important. Okay.
Just to say what you just said. Lot or most of the music, there is no doubt, come from Africa. I know the music who are very well known here, like blues and rap. I don't know about jazz. As someone said, the jazz is a classic and the blues is the folk. I agree with that. I can say to you, the blues have its real roots in West Africa. There is no doubt about that. I'm not a scholar too, but I know because the key, the West African play, like the Segu blues or the Fulani or the Wasulu, that's the pentatonic, and I know the pentatonic is a key. The bluesmen here play in that. The other thing also, the rap music. I know we have some kind of rap music. We use always to sing that, the way like the speed, the way like we declaim the word, the speed, we used to do that. And another aspect, like the unreverential discourse of rap. I don't know if you understand me, like unreverential? No, unreverence, like making fun of people, making fun of the powers,
Reverend.
being like me. We have this kind. style of music and who's declining just like the rap. We say it very fast, making fun of everybody, like, and that in some way it's the spirit of the rap music, like, contestation discourse, unreverential, and I can say that, and I know we have a style named the Tasu. I show you one video of that. It's all about it. So the rap and the blues, we can hear that in a lot of African styles.
Sure. And you're not the first person to suggest the origins of the blues being in West Africa. Other authors have talked about that in terms of the experience, not necessarily from a scale or point of view. We know about the pentatonic scale and that kind of thing, but I'm saying the cry of the blues and stuff like that in West Africa. Other authors have done that.
And also, just one thing is what you call the blues here express like kind of melancholy, a kind of of deep deception, of expression of hard work. In West Africa, the songs or the music sound like the blues, talk about the bravery, about the courage, about the fidelity of about some ideals, which is very different. But at the same time, that the difference there, the blues is joy.
Okay, but we said that earlier. Okay, 2 quick points, and then I will allow that one question from the audience. Sister came all up here to come touch my ear, but y'all make it brief.
No, I just wanted to do something real quick because I was supposed to ask. Stop yelling. I was. This mic in. Oh, all right. There we go.
All right. I was actually supposed to close this out, but we went in a different order. I just want y'all to get a little feel for the hip hop thing. So I want everybody to clap their hands, right? Tap. Come on, wake up. Come on. I know y'all been sitting for a minute. You can clap. All right. Now throw your hands in the air. Now wave them like you just don't care. Now if you came out to a party tonight, everybody say, oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. All right, I'm done.
Did you want to make a... Okay, I'm going to let my sister here from Mississippi Valley, did you want to make one quick point? I saw your hand. Make it quick.
On.
That's funny.
If anybody wanted to ever get a perfect example of the influence of Africa on blues without ever, there's a blues artist that is very African. When you hear him, his name is Cedric Burnside. You listen to him, and you got to listen to him when he's playing guitar. You go listen to his live stuff. It's very African. And I asked Cedric, okay, Cedric, where'd you get it from? Cedric told me, said, man, when I came up with this, I had never heard of Khalil. I had never heard of any of the African guys that I knew now. This just came, that was just in me to play. But you listen to it, and you listen to Khalil, you listen to some other West African artists, you're gonna hear straight up African music. But check out Cedric Burnside. If you ever want to hear what I'm demonstration of that, check out Cedric Burnside.
Okay, I want to let her ask a question.
Well, I just really wanted the panel to just chime in real quick on that. Coming in on the one. Now I know that's a Gullah Geechee rhythm that James Brown has picked up on, and I know it has to have some connection to African rhythms, and I just wanted to, if you guys can comment on it.
Did you understand the question? Did you understand the question?
We need our scholar. Mr. B, come here, man.
Latin rhythms on the one, on the Gullah.
I was going to let y'all talk about that.
Let me start off by addressing that. Back in my day, I thought I could dance. like I was doing earlier? Okay. So I was with, oh, I see a hand, like a young hand. Okay, can you give me a second? I can't see that far. That's a female. Okay, no. I'm gonna address it.
Second one.
Let me say something. When I was, they called for somebody in the audience. These were some women from West Africa, and they called for somebody out of the audience to dance with them. I was the first one that jumped up. So I walked up, and the drummer started playing, and then the bell pattern, okay? Well, they were behind me. I'm up here doing it. I couldn't feel the beat, and I'm turning around. I said, I'm not dancing with them. They're not dancing on, they're not moving their hips on 2 and 4 like in syncopation. Found out they was dancing to the bell pattern. Now, that goes against maybe what we're doing in Western civilization, because we had the drum beat, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. But yet, we will rock you. That's 2 and 4. I mean, that was a bit of a natural thing that came from the syncopation, trying to re-emphasize the offbeat phrasing going back to the motherland of West Africa. So this thing, I know you're talking about James Brown. I saw a documentary on it, that one. But if you listen to the backbeat of the drummer, the people who are still dancing to 2 and 4. So I'm gonna let you all continue to
there you go. I mean, he more or less just pretty much said it pretty succinctly. Oh, here's our professor. Why you leave us, man? What you gonna do this with? At any rate, I don't know so much about putting so much. I'm not in a position to say, I'm not a scholar about African rhythms and such as these gentlemen. But as far as the one, as he was saying, establishing where the one is really important in terms of understanding when the rhythm starts over. Because as you're dancing, when you see someone that, I hate to say it like this, but if they look like they're offbeat when they're dancing, it's because you're accounting for the one that they may not be falling on. It's just like, when you hear people clapping, woo, clap, woo, clap, but there'll be that one person out there that's clapping on the one, clap, clap, you know what I'm saying? And the reverse of that. But in their mind, that's the one. So a universal one has to be established with a rhythm so everyone knows where to return to. Because say, for example, when you get into African rhythms or Latin rhythms, it gets very polyrhythmic. So the one is not as established as he was doing, like the you can see or feel the 2 and 4 coming, and you know where the one is established. But then when you get into really polyrhythmic things, it's like and it really gets rhythmic to try to establish where the one is. That's where they say bringing it back to the one, because when it gets very polyrhythmic, that one can be lost very easily. It'll feel like you done fell out in an elevator chute if you're not paying attention. But that's the best way I can describe it.
Okay, we're gonna have to move on forward. Let's give the panel a hand. So at the 2:15 hour, we have listed here blues performance. I know it's not 2:15. Go back in the time machine. Maybe let's know how far behind we are. Blues performance by Butch Mudbone of the Senegal Nation of Indians. So, are you all ready? You gonna let us know what we're gonna hear?
This is about where'd Sam go?
Looking for Sam?
Yeah. Actually, there was some more horns too, but I don't see
I guess Mr. Blake will take the place of 4.
Club Ebony at 7.
Yeah.
It's on the sheet.
Which sheet?
The schedule.
Not this, the plain sheet. Just the one sheet. I don't think we brought it. So I thought that was yesterday.
All right. I'm really glad to be here. Cut my finger on a power saw a couple of weeks ago and just about back to normal. So if I make a couple of mistakes, don't throw nothing at me, all right? Anyhow, I want to take it back to about 1960 because one of my favorite songs that BB did back then, and it always feels good to do it.
Woke up this morning, my baby was gone.
a couple other things that we need to do, and is this what I think it is? Sylvester? I recognize that voice. Is that you? My God, do you remember me? Oh my God, come on up here, brother. Come on. I looked down here and saw that name. How you doing, man? Okay, take it away. Yeah, everything's fine.
All righty, thanks. Thanks for having me, and thank you guys for being here. And my name is Sylvester Hoover, and I'm a 100% Mississippi Delta. I was born here, I was raised here, and I was educated right here in the Mississippi Delta. And I was born Jim Crow. I was born, a field hand. I was born before civil rights. And I've been here my whole entire life, and I kind of seen a 360-degree turn. I started here in 1957, and I was born a sharecropper. I was born poor. Everybody I knew was poor. I thought you're supposed to be that way, because I didn't know any different. I was trapped inside this box, and I couldn't see any different, And that's the way we lived it here in the Mississippi Delta. And we lived it, in blues and civil rights. I do blues and civil rights tours. And blues brought us through the hard times.
That's right.
They couldn't have made it without the blues. The blues wasn't written, it was born. It came from their heart. And I talk about Robert Johnson, Honey Boy Up with all these guys, BB King. And these guys wasn't educated, but they were smart. And they didn't think about hellhounds on my heel. I feel this. I feel it from my heart. And that's what blues music comes from. It's a thought, the way they live. And all they doing is just telling a story about their life. Because I lived this life and I sing it. If they had a bad day at work, they'll come home and they'll sing it. It was a hell of a day. I hope tomorrow will be a better day. And that's the way they felt. And that's the way they did, because that's the way they live. Because, as you notice, blues guys, when they sing their music, they scream. They make these funny faces because I'm irritated, I'm frustrated, and I'm agitated. And I gotta let it out. Yeah. And that's what they do. And they make these funny faces. That's why a lot of people that plays blues music don't sing blues music. Because they don't have these feelings like these guys have. And they let it out. They have to do it to live. If they didn't let this bad feeling out, they would die. Because they said, man, it was a hell of a day. I hope tomorrow will be a better. And they scream it, make these ugly faces because I'm mad. I'm so irritated and agitated, I don't know what to do. But that's what made the music. Hard work and bad circumstances made the blues. And blues and civil rights goes together. One wouldn't work without the other. I mean, I noticed doing voting rights, human rights stuff right here in the Mississippi Delta, these people would sing it. They would sing exactly the way they feel. They had a big sheriff named Big Smitty. He would beat these people up and not let them vote when they passed the voting rights laws. And these people was going to vote, and they would sing that. They would sing exactly what they did. I'm looking at this with my own two eyes. They'll say, I'm freedom bound. Big Smitty, you can't turn me around because I'm freedom bound. They singing what they feel. Yeah. And the blues and gospel is the identical same music. The same thing they sang on Saturday, they sang it on Sunday. On Saturday night, they said, my baby, nobody knows my baby, how she makes me feel. And on Sunday morning, on Sunday they do the identical same thing. My God, nobody knows my God, how he makes me feel. I mean, the same people, same person singing it, same audience, same people, and that's what it do. And that's that blues is inspire us. And I do blues and civil rights tours, and I know blues gonna be the bridge to peoples because I see it. Yeah. I see it. I bought the store that Robert Johnson would buy his Prince Albert tobacco in, and I would have a bunch of Chinese pull up in front of my store, can't speak a lick of English, but they can say, Robert Johnson, and they can play his music, and they can't say hello to me. I mean, his music is transcendent, it bridges peoples. I see peoples from everywhere. I meet peoples that I never would have met before, exception of the blues music. And right now, blues is so powerful. I see people from everywhere. I see the principal at Sideline School that teaches Obama kids. He want to put blues and civil rights into their school. It's reaching around the world. And I tell people, you in the Delta, the Mississippi Delta is the soul of the entire world. This is where it started, right here in the Mississippi Delta. And when I see people come from foreign country, come to the Mississippi Delta, they say, I feel it. And you can see the expression on their face. They say, wow, wow, wow. And that's it. It's blues music, and it's the history of the Mississippi Delta. It's bad history, but it's good history. Right. It got you all here, and I'm here, so it couldn't be too bad. Yeah. You know, so that's what it is. And I don't want to take up all your time, but I just want y'all to know a little bit about the blues and the history of the Mississippi Delta. And look me up. And I just did a sharecropper documentary of me growing up here in the Mississippi Delta, of my life growing up on Money Road before civil rights. And you can see the stories of it. In 1966, I'm the youngest of 9 siblings, and we picked 500 bales of cotton. And my dad said, boy, we had a good year. We picked 500 bales of cotton. And when he went to sell up with the boss man said the identical same thing. Man, you had a good year. You picked 500 bales of cotton. You almost broke even. You owe me $200. They did that because he was a good worker.
They call it battles due.
Right. Mm-hmm. He never could get out of debt. And, I'm looking at this, I'm a little guy, 8, 9 years old, I'm looking at this, and they do this right before Christmas time. And the boss man, he wouldn't clear any money, and he had 9 kids at home. The boss man let him come back home, and he'll wallow in that for all day. Next day, the boss man come and said, Frank, if you need some money, you can go down to the store, and Mr. Haddon will let you borrow something. And Mama said, borrow as much as possible because you're not going to get out of debt anyway. And that's the way we live. And thank y'all.
If you truly want to know the history of this area, this is your man. Trust me. Trust me. All right, we're going to close it out with Blues, the soundtrack of the civil and human rights movement. We'd like for the panel to come forth from Charles Mitchell, Reginald Siegler, Jimmy Mays, Theodore Arthur Jr., and Ms. Tucker again. And we're really going to have to limit you to 15 minutes because there's a short film presentation. Huh? All right, you heard the captain. If you just get how many of you in here? All right. It's 7 o'clock tonight at the. Is it the Elping? We go back to the Elping Club. Oh Lord, we got. Let's close this out with the revival tonight, like you see. My dad used to run revivals around here, so we're gonna close it out with a revival tonight, right? We're gonna save some souls. Is that all right? You got anything you want to say about? You gonna be behind the thing tonight? All right. Well, we know we're gonna have a good time.
I'm gonna say this just because I know it, and you know how stories they get around. Bill left, and I wish he was here. I went to Canada with Bill, and he had an infection on his finger. He still tried to play his guitar, and he nearly lost his whole hand. And now I got Mudbone here in the house that's been standing up there trying to play his guitar with a sawed-off finger. You say you cut that off on a saw this week? His finger is split. Now that's the blues, y'all. But you don't need to look. I'm telling you this. Don't you mess your hand up. I nearly lost one blues man. I don't know how you was doing that up there.
Best I could.
Yeah, that's not cool. I'm telling you that. If your hand is messed up, don't play with me tonight. That's for blues.
Now let me ask: is there anybody that's supposed to lead this panel? I don't want to make the same mistake I made on the last panel. Should we just go for it? Is that what we should do? Is that all right? Okay, so the topic is Blues, the soundtrack of the civil and human rights movement. That's our topic, okay? Is that all right? And you know, we have roughly 15 minutes. So we're gonna start over here, introduce yourselves, and y'all just take it off, go roll with it.
Okay, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'm hard of hearing, I can't hear you. Good evening.
Good evening.
That's much better, okay. Since we don't have much time, I'm gonna try to be brief, be good, and be gone. First thing I want to say is that I've been hearing a lot of things. I've got to address this issue before we get into the main topic. We want to talk about black music, especially in America. This is the only thing that we really own here, is the arts. Blues, gospel, and jazz. It's the only thing that we created. And what I hear everybody talking about is how it was created. Now for me, the Europeans brought the scales and all of the technical stuff over here, and we brought the emotions from Africa, the rhythms and the emotions. I heard them talking about how the feeling is the same. Well, that feeling is based on emotions. So the combination of those two things is how we start creating all this music. To me, we must be more concerned about preserving this. This is the only spot that we can say that's ours over here. We got to find a way to promote it, get more people involved. Now, I want to learn how to speak to our young people so they can understand what we are talking about instead of becoming insulted by the information they're getting. I want to include them in the new concept of learning to appreciate it and to learn how to preserve it. And then they need to learn this music too, because this is the only thing that has sustained us. I've been just watching what's happening around me. We've had more millionaires to come out of Mississippi and the Delta and earn money to take care of themselves and get away from the plantations and cotton and all that kind of stuff and become entrepreneurs. So it tells me it is a viable means of creating wealth, the blues. So we need to be more concerned about that. Blues and civil rights, I heard that earlier. I think I'll borrow that from y'all too, because that goes together. Because without human rights and without people being treated fairly, we can have no progress. And it's time for us to start getting a piece of the pie. We've been denied our fair share of this thing far too long. So now the only way we can do it, it's time for us to stop begging folks to help us. We need to start joining forces and create this human chain in the black community, and each one help the other one to gain the kind of prominence and respect that we need. So we talking about pulling some dollar bills out. Instead of going to the casino with it, we need to come to the concerts with some of that money. Instead of paying $300 or $400 to play the slot machines, we need to take $100 and go buy a concert ticket with it for 2 people or 3 people. And that's what we need to do. And see, we got to take care of our own selves. We need to stop asking folks for help and start helping ourselves. We're spending the money the wrong way, folks. We got plenty of money. We don't need to buy a Mercedes when a nice Toyota would take us to the same place until we are able to afford that, okay? We need to build up our own resources before we start squandering our money and living large. We need to start being more concerned about spending our money wisely and doing things that will create wealth instead of getting rid of it. We need to create, become creators.
Okay.
Thank you. Now quickly on the side about these songs, we want to talk quickly about those protest songs. When we were coming up, I like Curtis Mayfield. He talked about things like, if there's a hell below, we all gonna go, because we all wrong. It's only, you know, God is the only perfect person, being that I've heard about lately. And so until we get that straight, that's where the human rights part of it comes in. We need to learn to treat our fellow men properly. Stevie Wonder did the thing where that was so beautiful. And so many people, I don't have time to talk about it, but that's the essence of it. It's all based on emotions. Blues, bad feelings, hard times are created from bad feelings. And those bad feelings is what we display when we sing or play the blues. We get rid of them through the blues. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and he mentioned Curtis Mayfield, and we all know about those kinds of songs, you know, where it addressed what was going on. So I'm going to come to you now, blues and civil rights.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jimmy Mays, and I'm a blues pioneer. Played some of it all, but I would like to start off. Alfonso had put something on Facebook about this, and I typed in teaching and music, and that's what it's been about today, teaching and music. Before I go any further, because I got a short message, but you've been giving each other a round of applause. How about it for Dr. Alfonso Sanders, Robert Terrell, and the rest of the staff? Give it up for them, because they made this possible. I had to sneak that in. But ladies and gentlemen, he picked a hard subject for us to have soundtrack and civil rights. When I make this short, one of the greatest cats come out of the Delta was Sam Cooke. His first song was a spiritual, but then he turned it over and was worried about his father. Then when it comes to soundtracks and the civil rights, there was a song called Working on a Chain Gang. L.C. Cooke said they was on a trip, and Sam Cooke saw these men out there on the chain gang, and they was digging ditches, but they were doing it in rhythm. See, we always had rhythm. Even in the penitentiary, it was Sam Cooke just told LC, look, and Sam said, chain gang. And that song won his biggest record. That's the sound of the men working on chain gang. The civil rights and soundtrack. He mentioned a poet. Everybody talk about Smokey Robinson. I love him because I was at Motown. But Curtis Mayfield was a poet, and it was in Philadelphia at the Uptown Theater. The Tim Chasers was killing the impressions. So this Wednesday night, Curtis Mayfield said, ladies and gentlemen, I want to do a song for you off our new album. It hasn't been related yet. We're getting ready to put it out. And he hit People Get Ready. Just hitting the music, and the theater went crazy. Curtis Mayfield had that feel. And after Curtis Mayfield, you could go right on down the line when it comes to soundtracks. Now soundtrack, you think of theater, because you had to put the music for the soundtrack. And we could just name so many people and so many pioneers. I'm sticking on Sam Cooke because he told LC, this particular song, I feel like I should have wrote it. That's Blowing in the Wind, ladies and gentlemen. Bob Dylan, Blowing in the Wind. I mean, listen to the words. How many times must a cannonball fly before a man can be free? Soundtrack, Blowing in the Wind. But it's civil rights. You all understand where I'm coming from?
Yes, sir.
Well, say something. Give it up. I just like to have fun, ladies and gentlemen. I could go on and on, but I think you get the idea of what I'm saying. I don't want to take up any more time, so I'd like to pass it on. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and we're going to pass it on. And, you know, all of it comes out of the blues. The blues is the granddaddy of all of the circular music. So I know it's in a wide term. All right.
Well, that's kind of like my intro statement, is that, you know, without blues, it's the American roots music that discovers all music in America, period. So without blues, there would be no, and America really owes us a really big cake, because we gave them something real special, didn't we? When we brought this music to America. You see there's the money too. But I'm thinking back on the civil rights movement, and it was really organized as an effort by black people to just gain equal rights. not be discriminated against, be able to vote and all that kind of stuff. And to me, blues music did that, and music period did that, because you could put in song the words that you had in your heart and how the struggle was. But I particularly love blues because I'm a biracial girl born in the 1958, okay? And when my mother met with her girlfriends down in the valley, the upper and the lower valley, they wanted to go hear the blues. They didn't have a good music like that, so they wanted to go down in the valley and listen to the blues. So they go to Farmdale somewhere in Dayton, Ohio, and they listen to the blues, and she see my father on stage singing High Heel Sneakers and all the songs that he's written. And my mother said, I like him. And you know, when a woman like a man, she chooses the man, right? But the bad thing about it is he had a wife. Okay, so that's the way the blues was back then. Well, all of a sudden blues brought me to the world. So I have other brothers and sisters that come from my father, but I am the only one out of 9 of his kids that do music. So I thank God for that. And the other thing that I wanted to mention was in 1963, August 28th, 1963, I was 5 years old. And I remember my mother telling us we had to go to the March on Washington. I still have my program. I was a little girl. And we couldn't carry suitcases. We had to have the burlap bags, you know, the brown bags, and put them on a Greyhound bus in Dayton, Ohio, and drive 6 hours to Washington, D.C. to march on Washington. My brother and my sister, our pictures are on the front page of the Dayton, Ohio Dispatch in 1963. And I remember them as a little girl. I always had music in my heart. You know, I always loved music. But I remember them singing, ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around, ain't gonna let nobody. And then the other people say, turn me around, got to keep walking, walking up the King's Highway. And I was a little girl, and I remember that. I wanted to share that with you guys. So.
You said something very profound. And I thought I heard her say she was here because of the blues. Did y'all hear that part?
That's right.
Some of you in the audience sitting under the sound of my voice are here because of some blues song. And somebody heard. Come on, let's get real. We're talking about the power of music, funny. And some of it might have been doing the civil rights. I'm sorry.
Let me say this too.
Okay,
you had the worst prejudices back then. I remember when my mom was pregnant. I don't remember, but she told me when she was pregnant with me, walking down 3rd Street in Dayton, Ohio.
I know.
With my father, asked her, "Is this your boyfriend or your husband?" And she said, "This is my boyfriend." My mother was pretty bold, you know. "This is my boyfriend," you know. And they put them both in jail. And she was pregnant with me. She said she was sick, had a headache. She couldn't even get an aspirin from them. They kept her in there for 3 days without a phone call. And those are the kind of things people had to suffer through. And I like to say this too, that a lot of black people think it was the black movement, but there were a lot of white people that believed in the civil rights movement, and they were there for a change as well. So we can't forget those people either.
And I'll speak to you. I spent 5 years in Dayton. So I know about 3rd Street.
Right.
Okay, fine. All right, good.
Speaking of Dayton, Ohio, that's the home of the funk.
Yes.
We just hosted a group called ZAP at our Funk Fest in Syracuse, New York. And that was just this past Saturday. They're from Dayton. I believe the Ohio players are from Dayton. I believe, I know the Stone City Band's located there now. Slave is from Dayton. We had them in Syracuse last year. So Dayton, Ohio, George Clinton. And the P-Funk Mob is from Dayton. So Dayton, Ohio does present some really, really good musicians, speaking of Teeny Tucker.
And there's a new museum there, right? Isn't there a new museum there? A museum, Rhythm and Blues Museum now in Dayton?
The Rhythm and Blues Museum is not in Dayton now.
But it's not in Dayton? You sure?
Is it, how new is it?
Kind of new. Well, I can find out. I can find out for you. Well, let him talk.
Okay. I think I'm the last one on the list, so anybody else got anything? Go ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to say this before I forget it. We keep saying this is the 4th time, but I have a vision that Dr. Alfonso Sanders is taking this to all the colleges. Since it started here, I can visualize this going to all the colleges so we can get the news out about the blues. It should go to all the schools. had to say that.
That is big. We're going to talk about, I guess, the civil rights and the effect of music on the civil rights, or the effect of the civil rights on music. And I think a lot of people here have mentioned a lot of the really popular songs, really popular people that came from the Mississippi Delta. I think that I'm here today because God put Alfonso Sanders in my path and me in his path, and he's come up to Syracuse, New York, where I am, where I'm located a lot of times, and we've talked and we've played together. And so he's invited me down. And some of the subjects we've talked about is the fact that my family is from here in the Mississippi Delta. So before I go any further, can I just see who's from the Delta here today by a round of applause? Raise your hands. Anybody from the Delta? Okay, I thought it would be a lot more. I thought maybe everybody might be but me. But nonetheless, throughout my lifetime, there was, everybody knows Jim Crow, and my family ran to New York State running from Jim Crow because they'd had enough run-ins with Jim Crow and it was just too much, right? So they came to Syracuse, New York, which was supposed to be a land of opportunity for them. They got there, and today I should probably tell you that Syracuse, New York is really not a land of opportunity. There's a lot of poverty there. There's a lot of people who are in despair. But nonetheless, I'm separate but not equal. But nonetheless, being from this area, my family being from this area, I always had a real affinity for it. I loved all the musicians that came here. I studied the musicians that come here. From here, I love them. I've read about it. I've read that the soil in Mississippi, the Mississippi Delta, is some of the most fertile soil in the entire world. I heard someone else say that earlier. But I also heard that the soil on the Nile River was the soil that was so fertile that it was the soil that sprung forth civilization, right? And if the Mississippi River soil is that fertile, then it must be fertile enough to spring forth the best music and the best souls that have come to this world. Someone else just said earlier that the Mississippi Delta is also kind of like the beacon of the world, or kind of like a place where it gives the whole world music, this blues music has. So I'm a student of that. I love that music. I love it because my family was here years ago. Probably was in the 50s. They had a group here called the Friendly Five. I don't know if any of you know that group, but they brought that group to New York State when they came, and there were other Mississippi Deltans with them. And when they came there, they sang there, and they had a good career there, and that helped us to get established in Syracuse. So I continue now to write about musicians through a column that I call the Friendly Five, and I do that all because to me it's attributed to my family that came here from the Delta, but it's also just a tribute to the Delta itself. It presents so much to the world. And as it relates to the civil rights movement, I think that any period of time, the music that comes from that period of time kind of reflects that period of time. There was a young man up here earlier that was talking about rap music, and I think today rap music, we say is so bad, but the times are so bad. And I think that the only thing that rap music is really doing is just kind of emulating, or, you know, they say art imitates life. I think that that's exactly what it's doing. So the blues did that. I think music today does that. And I think if we want to change music, and if we need to change music, then we need to change what's going on. And the gentleman at the end right here, his name is Theodore Arthur. I don't know him, but he said something just earlier that we need to start doing for ourselves. I think we need to start building our own empires, our own enterprises, and we need to, you know, we once had the Negro Leagues, and Jackie Robinson did a great thing, right, by going into the majors and opening the doors for others to come in and be a part of the majors and things of that nature, but we no longer have the Negro Leagues. So, you know, maybe he did something great. We got LeBron James, we got everybody making tons of money in the major leagues, right, but we don't own it. It's not ours, and we're still having the same problems today that we had during the civil rights movement, that we had during Jim Crow, that we have during slavery. You know, it's really not a lot different. So I think I'll wrap it up now, but in order for us to change the sound of the music, because we seem to talk about today's music so much, and it's not my favorite, but nonetheless, I just think the artists are really just painting a picture that they see. You know what I mean? So I won't say anymore. Thank you.
But I like what Reggie add it. You know, if you want to change the music, you have to change the culture, because a musician will always sing and talk about. It's like journalists. You know, we just write our lyrics and we write our stories like any other writer would do. And so the music is always going to be about the culture you live in. I often say if a Martian dropped down and found the CDs or documents, they probably would know exactly what was going on. You know, if they couldn't find a book or they found some music, they'd still know what's going on. So it's always about that. I want to give them a big hand. Thank you. And of course, we got people behind the scene like Kevin McCarthy, who's helping document this, you know, by way of film.
It's an honor. It's an honor.
Oh, it's an honor, yeah. I thought it was a video. No, we're gonna close out. I want to do something very special. Didn't know if I was going to do it, but I know I am. I mentioned, it was mentioned here about the Rumble. I've been following that documentary for a long time when it came out, and I got to know Puda Faye, who was very, very instrumental in closing the gap between the blues rituals, you know, of Native American music and African American music. And of course, she got an opportunity to spend time with BB King doing some tours. And of course, after I saw the connection between that, I asked her would she come, but she was stuck in Canada and couldn't get out during the time. You know, her visa had run out and all that kind of stuff. But I think she has it straightened out now. But I hopefully maybe in the future I get a chance to do some performing with her. This is part one. It's going to be a short clip. It won't be the whole thing, but at least you'll know what we're talking about when we mention the Rumble. So we're going to play 2 little short clips from it.
Can I tell people something about BB King right quick?
Yeah, hold on one second, Robert. What's that?
I'm going to tell you this right quick. BB King had made a statement once, and I used to do shows. I was on with the rock groups. BB would go on in the middle. We were doing theaters every week. He didn't close the show back then because the kids, young people, weren't into blues. And he said what made him the most happiest in his career one time, he was going on, he was a headliner, but he was going in the middle because the kids was into Chuck Jackson and Jackie Wilson. I would say this particular show, they started applauding for him, and he said he almost started crying. So he made that statement. That's what you ought to know, that comes from BB King when they finally started accepting his blues. Just want you to know that, okay?
You'll recognize the music and rock stars in Rumble, the Indians who rocked the world. The filmmakers treat us to archival and concert footage, and the story is told by the iconic music legends who knew and played with the musicians that inspired them. In 1958, Link Wray made history with his revolutionary power chord feedback-style guitar classic, which was banned from the radio for fear it would incite violence.
I think Link Wray purely loved rock and roll and felt pissed off and annoyed and disappointed that in some ways, because he was Shawnee, half Shawnee, and his family had been treated so badly, he took that bitterness and created it into something that was not reductive but proactive.
There was a song came on the radio, a guitar instrumental, and it changed everything.
Link Wray, it's rock and roll.
Rumble. Yeah, that's the one.
Rumble.
Hey, Rumble.
Rumble had the power to help me say, I'm going to be a musician.
And then I found out that he was an Indian.
The music that we know here in the United States is fully supported by input from Native and indigenous people.
Mr. Randy Castillo! Randy had become one of the most influential heavy metal drummers in the world.
This is Jesse Ed Davis.
I particularly fell in love with Jesse Edwin Davis. He was with Taj Mahal, and Taj's album is what spurred me to rock more.
The filmmaker, Catherine Bainbridge, says the music is loved because it comes from the heart.
The violence and oppression, of course, against people of color, though, was like off the hook.
And out of that violence comes this beautiful music. Because music is like a healing balm, right? When everyone says the blues isn't sad. It speaks about what's going on so people can feel healed. So people can feel they can handle what they're having to endure.
The film deconstructs America's violent history and the origin of American music, blues, jazz, rock, and folk. It traces the influence of Native American Indian culture as it blended with African American and follows the evolution of the music.
You can hear the spirit of some of the old music before plantations and slavery and so forth and colonization. People are really shocked when they hear the traditional music of the Southeast. They're like, that's Indian music? I thought that was African music.
The film reveals how American music has so much power. As Indians and slaves mingled, the music that emerged was a result of the blending of America's violent and rich cultural history. Carolyn Turner, VOA News.
Today we bring you the part 2 of our review on Rumble, the Indians who rock the world. The documentary is often here in Washington and it showcases Native American Indians in the history of rock music. Here's VOA's Caroline Turner.
Rumble, the Indians who rocked the world, takes a deep dive into America's violent past and the music that emerged as indigenous Indians and slaves shared their stories and music.
For me, it was just a huge revelation that the banjo was an African instrument. The banjo, for the first 100 years of its existence, was not a white instrument, at all. It was a plantation instrument.
Seeing the Indians at Carnival was getting to know who I was. That was the only time that black men could put on feathers. We are a combination of indigenous people and indigenous people of Africa.
It was a Muskogean village through this area. Our music is called stomp dance, and what you hear first is the calling, a call and response, where the leader calls out, and then the men answer. When you hear that up against blues, rock, jazz, it's part of the origin.
Everybody in the neighborhood, everybody has grown up on this. They've been doing this 150 years. Basically, they're Indians masking as black people in daily life because the Indians were treated even worse than the slaves.
When the African polyrhythm meets the American Indian 4 on the floor, you had the birth of American music. African music is not 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a polyrhythmic music. Native American music and Native American singing, when you hear it, and you hear it in this film, it's going to blow your mind.
When the African polyrhythms and the Native American folk on the floor came together, that was the beginning of what became American music.
Rumble, the Indians who rocked the world, the untold story of Native American influence on American music, offers music buffs a backstage pass to revisit great iconic concerts from rock history. Carolyn Turner, VOA News.
We're going to extend this over into Club Ebony. Everybody who's old enough to come in the club, I see tonight. It's 7 o'clock. We'll be there past 7 o'clock until. Some good music tonight, and thank you everybody. Thank you everybody.